Hi there. I'm with Connie Hazendonk today here, Salesforce training expert, and she's going to tell us a bit about what she does. So if you'd like to give a quick introduction about yourself, that would be great.
Cool. Well, thank you, Scott. Thank you for hosting me today. Yeah, my name is Connie, and I'm a Salesforce training expert. And what it does mean is I work with organizations who have Salesforce either implemented or about to implement, and I help them getting the most out of the system by translating sort of the technical aspects of the system to how users would use it, and thereby hoping that it makes everybody's life easier. And as an organization, you get a good ROI and you get good data to do analytics on.
Nice. How do you usually explain to someone what you do when they're outside of the Salesforce world?
I think the easiest to explain is like Salesforce itself is a CRM system. So it's a system where you track interaction with customers. So as an organization, say, for example, you call your utility provider and you say you have a billing question or a maintenance question. When you call a call center, they most likely have a system where they track this conversation, where they can see your information, where they can log your problems and then can follow up. All that information is what Salesforce does as a system. And so what I do is I help make sure that the person that picks up the phone as in a business knows what questions to ask and knows how to operate the system so that your query gets logged properly as a customer. It's also business, it's all kinds of different levels, but that is basically the crux of it. Is what I do is help people understand how to use that system.
So sort of getting people connected and tracking everything.
Yes, yes. And it's making sure that people also do it in the right way. Like if 10 people call and they all have the same problem, it all gets registered in the system in the same way. And it doesn't matter who picks up the call or where they are in the world, if it's an international company, everybody follows the same processes, follows the same steps. And I so often there help also make users understand why and how they need to do the stuff so that as a business, I have confidence that what people do in the system gives me the answer that I'm looking for. And so I, as a business, can make long-term strategic decisions on the information that we collect.
Right. So what's the biggest misconception about your work, and how does that relate in the questions that you normally get asked?
I think often they see me sort of as an HR person, and training is often seen as, and I think we've all done it, everybody who's been a professional, you often get at an introduction these boring, long HR session, and you sit there thinking like, what am I doing here? And so often they see me as that kind of trainer, that just sort of generic, long-winded, boring sessions. I'm actually somebody who comes in and actually really makes it bespoke, make sure that the users in the end understand and feel connected with what they need to do. And so I'm that translation tool. I think also it's often thought like, from a business perspective, why should we train people? It should be a very straightforward system. Why do we need to train people on this technology? And technology is simple often, but you need to give people some guidance and some training and some making sure that they do what you want them to do. So that's sort of the two biggest misconceptions is they see me as HR and businesses don't see the need for it, but there actually is a need to do it.
So from that, so what's kind of the biggest problem that your clients come to you with, and do all of them recognize what they actually need out of training?
I think the biggest problem they often see is that the business of the system isn't used the way it should be used. They often see it as a tech problem, and they have then often gone through all the technical solutions. And then they find that actually the technical, the fixing of the system isn't the problem. It's actually the users are the problem. And I often, at the very end of the line, they come to me, and it's often then a desperate situation whereby you should think from the beginning when you start implementing new systems, you need to think about this user and how to use it. And so that's one of the key elements of what business need to think about is don't think this at the end of the line, that's it. You need to integrate this from the beginning to make sure that whatever you do is successful.
So would this be a case of starting thinking about training as you're building the system, or before you're building the system, or when you get in the system requirements?
It's basically from the start. The moment you decide to implement the system, you should immediately start to think like, okay, I'm going to go to this often long project, because Salesforce implementations are often year projects, if not longer, 18 months, not uncommon. From the beginning, you have to think like, how do I bring this to my users? And that doesn't mean that you immediately need a full-time trainer from the beginning, but you need to think from the beginning, how am I going to enable my users? How am I going to bring this change to my users? Often terminology also linked with my work is enablement and changes. It's going to people that are going to use it are going to now do things differently. And we need to show them why and how. And so from the beginning, tag a training expert along to make sure that you have that translation in hand. You can pre-warn users, pre-train users. So it doesn't become like, oh, we're going live in a month. Oh, we have forgotten about our users.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be a nightmare.
Yes, and it's not uncommon, unfortunately.
Oh dear. What makes your approach different from, say, traditional Salesforce partners?
I think one of the things is I really work bespoke. So I don't have, so to speak, a generic solution. Yes, there's often common factors between all kinds of different customers, but the solution is always bespoke to what that customer needs, what that client needs. That's what I build. And I also think I often want to immerse myself both with the technical people to understand why and how they do things, but also working with the internal people from an organization, the decision makers, to understand why are we using the system? What is your plan with the system? Why should people use it? How should they use it? So I'm trying to put myself between those two so that that connection is there, so that in the end, the users use the system the way they should be using it, both from a technical perspective and from a business perspective. And I think I'm far more connected than where a lot of other organizations, they will just come in, pick it off the shelf, do a lot of screenshots in a deck, for example, and that's just the training. And that's not how you train a system.
No, I can see that when you say there's sort of overlap, it's, to me, sounds a bit like the 80-20 rule. So everyone, when they have a form, it might be name, address, telephone number,
Yep.
and then there's a whole heap of things depending if it's, say, distributing confectionery to shops or if it's customizing the latest car.
Yeah, it's people often think that their business is unique, and it is. But if you really strip it down to the bare bones, most businesses are selling something, and they're selling it to a customer. And so, yes, the information of the customer will be different, but they all have a name, an address. There's a lot of commonalities. And you sell something, that selling process, yes, is bespoke for your organization, but every organization has a sales process, so to speak. And we get complaints coming in or questions coming in. That information, again, unique for your organization, but the tools within Salesforce are sort of generic. So there's a lot of things that are similar in all organizations, but the way you use and the information you collect can be unique. And that's what I'm trying to also help my customers with, is say, well, have you thought about using it this way? Because I've been in the ecosystem for about 15 years now, worked with a lot of different customers. When I talk to a new customer, I actually can bring them learnings from all the other customers without naming or giving details, but saying more like, have you thought about this? Or why are you not using this thing? To help everybody basically using the system better.
Yeah. So what do you think is an uncomfortable truth about Salesforce implementation that leaders maybe don't want to hear?
I think one of the things is they just see it as it's just another IT tool for recording stuff. And they also, that's one of the sides. And the other side is, well, it's so enormous, we don't know where to start. Salesforce is a very big beast. I always call it a big beast. It has so many different things in it. And I think when an organization gets immersed in it, it gets dragged along by all kinds of experts from the industry to show what it all can do. And they forget in the end user. And the end user can be very diverse. They are young people who are very tech savvy. They might be a slightly older generation that potentially still use pen and paper or Excel spreadsheets. There's different dynamics there. And I think, unfortunately, it does happen. Still, there are organizations who do their sales performance through Excel spreadsheets, even big organizations, which is scary.
I have visions of a clipboard.
Yes. So you have to change your dynamic. And I think organizations often get dragged along in all this technology and all the funky things it can do, but forget at the end of the day, there is a salesperson or a call center person who wants to do things quickly in the right way. And they don't want all these bells and whistles. They want them as simple and quick as they can to use the system. And so I think that's often where business just lose it a little bit. They get dragged along and forget the end goal as such.
I saw a post from you on LinkedIn that was quite popular. Why do you think that you're aware and seem to be pushing back against the let's just automate it type of thinking?
Automation has its place, and I can see its place. We all want to do things easier, quicker, take away repetition. But and I think every business will agree, every customer up to a point is also different. You want to make a customer feel that they're valued, that they listen to, and that they can come with their problems. And I think we all know it from our own experience. When you go somewhere and you go to these chat boxes, they pop up and you need to answer these questions. I think like, well, none of them apply to me. And then you give other, and then you do other again. And then 10 clicks down the line, you talk with the person. And so that is automation. And so inherently it is helpful, but at the same time, and here again, the 80-20 rule also applies. You want to automate as much as you can, but think about the experience on the other side. And that's why I sometimes push back against the automation is, why are you using it? What is the reason to automate? And does it actually benefit in the end you as an organization and the information you're collecting?
There's kind of you because of your experience, you can strip it back and say this is actually the line you're trying to take, but you're giving 4 options when you only need 1.
Yeah, and because I think that's where I also then, when we talked about earlier about differentiation, where I differentiate from other people, I'm very much of an end user perspective minded, but also from a normal customer, normal user perspective, so to speak. I have a technical background a little bit, and I've done some of this stuff on the technical side. But whenever I do training, I always think about, if I would do this job, be a salesperson, be a call center person, or be a customer calling into this organization, what would my experience be? And so therefore, if I get all kinds of errors because we automate and I can't do certain things because with so much automation in place, I will get frustrated. And so I stop using, or I start putting in, as we call, crappy data. And so that's where I think it's so important to always think about this end goal and about what is the purpose of what you're doing.
So you mentioned data there. What's probably the most common thing you find yourself repeating to clients often?
Data consistency is, what are your rules and how to record stuff? For example, we see here both our names. I have spelled my full name. You just put the initials there, which is fine. That's how it can work. But in a system, when I record information, what is our business rule? And do we have a business rule? And that's what I keep repeating a lot is, what are your standardizations? How do you want people to record stuff properly? Because you need that to be able later to search for stuff and to be able to do analytics on it. And so that's one of the main things, is like data accuracy, checking your data, making sure people do the right things in the right way is a constant messaging.
Yeah. So what frustrates you most? You sound like you have an experience of both customer, client, and business frustration, but you probably do it in some sort of constructive way.
I think the biggest frustration for me is that businesses just think, like I said earlier, that Salesforce is just a simple tool to use. And yes, it is. But it has so many things in there, and so many users are just not IT savvy or tech savvy. They just, they're not constantly at home immersed in technical stuff or whatsoever. They just often, you have your dinner, you might spend time with your children, and you might then watch some television. And so we forget often that in their work, we have to help them therefore translate stuff that what we're doing. And the frustration is that businesses don't give sufficient time to the users to make this switch from whatever was before to this new system and that they need help understanding the system. It's like if I give you tomorrow a PS5, I mean, I don't have one. If you would give me one, I would have no clue where to use it, how to use it, where to start. I probably can figure it out by just plugging it in and trying these buttons. But if somebody could show it to me and say, right, these are the 10 steps you need to do to get it going, fantastic. Give those 10 steps, everything will be fine. That's sort of the difference, same with Salesforce in an organization. You can give it to people and just let them figure it out, or give them a good plan that they can follow.
Salesforce is probably, if not the biggest, one of the biggest, not software firms, but firms on the planet, and it's involved in so many things. So their key foundation is selling stuff. How do you think you could change one thing about how Salesforce is sold, and what would it be?
I think the biggest thing is, because it is the biggest in the world. They're the number one in what they do, and they're getting bigger every week, every month. They keep on acquiring new organizations. I think is actually thinking about the client that buying their stuff. And they're a fantastic company, and it is a fantastic tool, but I think a lot of it is geared towards sort of the Fortune 500 or Fortune 100 companies. So they're the big international companies that have gazillions of money, that do want all these bells and whistles. But at the same time, you have sort of the sort of small and medium-sized companies that are also using it. And they don't need all the bells and whistles. They just want a tool that works. And Salesforce is fantastic for that, because it can do a lot of stuff, even if it's sort of its more basic version. But they forget those users often, and they forget those clients. And I think that's where I think they can help a bit more in getting those people on board and use it, because you never know how big a company can grow. They start small, and you see it especially in tech, how quick companies go from a couple of 100,000 a year to multi-billion companies. Don't underestimate these small companies. They can become big or become acquired. So figure out how to help those customers. And they don't need all the bells and whistles. They want a more simplistic tool, and don't oversell them. Give them what they need.
You talked a lot about automation, data, and sort of scale of stuff. The obvious one that's around at the moment at the end of 2025 is AI and how that integrates. So do you think Salesforce has got that right now with AI integration?
Difficult to say. They're pushing it a lot. They have a lot of tools, and it's that big thing. I mean, any Salesforce communication conference you go to for the last 2 years, it's only AI. Again, there, I think what they miss is the users. Their user, their organization that they're selling to. A lot of them don't have the infrastructure, the capability, the knowledge to actually use it. Sales is ahead, and they have a lot of fantastic people internally who can drive it, who are passionate about it, and I can see its place. But the majority of organizations are just not ready yet to implement. They have too many fundamental issues to actually start using AI. And I think where Salesforce can really help is actually bring some very good use cases with explaining how it was implemented, the process people went through, sort of timelines that it took, people involved, to actually give a proper, use case that an organization can pick up and say, right, I don't use this especially this way, but here is a roadmap somebody else did. I start to get an understanding what I need to do in my organization to start using it. I think Salesforce is probably 5 years ahead of most companies, which is, they have to, because they're a big organization, they have to do this, and I completely understand that. But there's a lot of companies, I'm currently on a project where people, like I said, were still using spreadsheets. And they're now getting Salesforce. So talking with them about AI is an enormous leap. So they're not ready yet. They're working on it, and they're working on the fundamentals, but they're not ready yet. And I think that's where, yes, Salesforce has its tools, and it needs to build its foundation to be ready. It needs to now start getting its customers on board with some very good use cases, very good roadmaps to actually show to customers, if you want to use a tool, this is what you have to do.
Yeah. Well, one of the big bugbears that I've come across throughout the world is even just postcodes or zip codes. Yeah. The postal code stuff just across Europe is one set, and then you go elsewhere and the letters are in weird places.
Yes.
And now some places are just using numbers, but then they said, oh, we've run out of that. So they now have a split part zip code. So
Nightmare.
you end up with
Yeah.
a standard that was existing that changed and changed and changed again. And if it's not kept up within the system, it's obviously going to corrupt the data.
Yeah. And that's, for example, where potentially AI can work, is if I, as a user, type in certain information, you could potentially, either an automation or an AI tool, say, okay, based on this information, we know from globally through Google Maps, Apple Maps, whatever it is, we know these postcode information. I complete the information for my user. And I make sure that the postcode has the right setup and the right digits in there. And that is where these things can help. But again, you have to explain to businesses how to use it, what you need to do to set up. So that's where I think a lot of good things can happen. It's just getting the use cases in place, the practicalities for an organization to understand, like, how can I use it and how can I help?
Because it sounds like you just pointed out that AI can do that sort of thing quite well. And you have to sort of steer people who are obviously going to be in touch with the systems into the best way to use it and to not just click next on a screen.
Yes.
As I think that causes a lot of problems.
Yeah, people just bypassing it because most people want to be quick. In an organization, salespeople, they want to get a deal done. So they don't want to answer 40 questions if they can get away with 10. You know, people on a call, like if you're, like I said earlier, if you call a utility company, you don't want to be hanging on the phone for 30 minutes before you go through and then have to go through 20 questions before you can give your issue. And so that is where things like AI and automation can help in speeding that up, but also helping the user to get, okay, give me a summary of whoever is calling me or whoever what I'm doing selling. This is now what I need to do next. So do it the intelligent way to speed up the process for everybody. And I think that is where we should go, and we are going. But at the same time, you know, we need to get the foundations right. And I think that's where I, as a trainer, come in and make sure that foundation is right. So when businesses want to go the AI or the automation route even deeper, they have the right foundation in place with the right information, the right processes, and the right user understanding to be able to use it. Because we all know if you use ChatGPT and you give a crappy command, you get the most weird results. And it's the same with the CRM system. If I give some crappy AI commands, I potentially might start sending customers the wrong information, or potentially share, you know, information from one customer to another. So that's why these foundations are so important.
Yeah. So where's the best way to get in contact with you? I see you have a book in the background there.
Yes. So easiest is LinkedIn under my own name, so on the Connie Hazendonk. Or go to my website, trainsalesforce.com. And on any social media, you can find me as Train Salesforce, just Twitter. I still call it Twitter instead of X, Instagram, Threads, or Facebook, all of them nice and easy, all in the same name. So either way, you can find me.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Speak to you again.
Bye-bye.